Reginald, we have a huge problem. Bungie nerfed almost all exotics. I can't use the burr gun, nor can I use the honors and Reginald, are you in? Reginald!
Oh, hi, Archibald. When did you get here? To my dearest Archibald, I have heard your petitions of anguish and misery involving the alterations to the PvP sandbox, and I have the following to say. Ah! What do you mean they nerfed my builds? Are you certain? What am I even paying these sandbox devs for anyway? Don't they listen to anything we tell them? I mean, how hard can it be? Nerf shotguns, buff skyburners, keep the most fun builds a secret. Those bastards took a meat tenderizer to every single groin of nearly every single build. I mean, dear God, they even disabled icefall mantles of all things. I think I'm having a panic attack. Does anyone have a picture of a dismantled Fellwinters? We will need to shift our focus in creating these from offense to defense, Archibald. From creating to protecting. I know you can be the overreactive type, so I've compiled a short list of every build and how we can adjust our loadout or playstyle to effectively reverse the loss in power affecting the most powerful choices. And in case you need a refresher, I've left a link in the description for each build I mention here. Let's start with Titan. Sweet Business ironically promises to be even better following these changes. Its time to kill remains the same, fully spun up at 0.6 seconds, and better yet, all kills with primary weapons reward even more super energy. So our tactic of accuracy through volume shall remain unchanged. Unfortunately, the changes to ability regen have severely hampered, but only in one dimension. Glacial Grenade. While yes, Glacial Grenade is finally stripped away from the Cheeto-covered fingers of Shadow Dive clutchers, both the cooldown and the freeze of this ability was caught in its wake. We will now need to wait an extra 40 seconds to gain another charge, so to counter this, I recommend swapping either Whisper of Conduit or Whisper of Rhyme to Whisper of Torment. Due to the bullet sponge nature of this setup, you will often find your grenade ability up almost indefinitely if you are doing a good job of being in the way of the enemy's assault. We can't do much about the icefall mantles being disabled, so until then, just hold on to the memory that they have received a quality of life change which allows us to disable their effect as we please. The other top contender for off-meta Titan builds ironically may have become even stronger with respect to the overall meta. Our Paladin build with Divinity and Ashen Wake promises to have much more room to breathe now that not only shotguns getting their nerf, but also counter-ability attacks are far less frequent. Better still, this class's super ability can now finally hit targets with half-decent consistency. One thing you will need to remember is that our instant detonating explosive Tangerine now deals less damage, from 150 to 130. This means that you will need to soften up targets further before you force-feed them a ball of burning justice. Similarly, don't count on only 2 stacks of roaring flames to kill targets outright anymore. Just like your little hammer that could, you will need 3 stacks to guarantee a kill. But I am sure that won't stop you from channeling the wrath of God using Divinity to make their crit box larger than a refrigerator.
I hope you prayed to the right god, you filthy meta-slave!
While there are, of course, have been other Titan builds, frankly, these builds listed here are still the most fun and the most viable. Right, now for Hunters. Archibald, I'm not quite sure why Bungie gave Hunters even more one-shot abilities than every other subclass combined, but here we are. Despite Quick Access Sling getting its frankly deserved nerf, still doesn't mean I agree with it, Bungie. It still is a very powerful option for bows. The King's Fang build still will allow you to operate as the judge, jury, and executioner for the enemy team while hiding in the shadows like an introvert at a birthday party. If you still desire the practically instant swap into the Rat King after a leading arrow shot, you could use the Mechaneer's trick sleeves. But, yeah. Bungie bungled that too! So, I have found that simply using a dexterity mod for my sidearm to be sufficiently expedient at dispatching a follow-up swap into my Rat King. Just remember that you will need to rely on the element of surprise on more close-quarter combat-based weapons like an SMG. I have been using the Graviton forfeit with these and I can't recommend it enough. I gain an increase of my bamboozling melee and I stay invisible for far longer with increased recovery. I couldn't even notice the ability nerfs with all of these performing a symphony of silent assassinations. I know there have been many more made for hunters, but frankly, Archibald, I feel the need to further test and refine them before I make any conclusions. My scientific method demands I drill holes in at least 1,000 unwilling test subjects before making conclusions. So keep an eye out for an updated version of many of the hunter builds we have come to know and love. Warlock builds range from mostly unaffected to completely destroyed, starting with the neutered. The Valkyrie will never be the same speed of lethality like it did with the pre-nerfed quick access sling. You could get close to mimicking its effect by running a double hand cannon dexterity setup on your arms, but it's still not nearly as swift. And before you ask, no, Ophidian aspects aren't able to perform at the same level as the sling. Even with them on the double dexterity setup, the best you can get is fast, not breakneck. I recommend you play further into your aerial mobility with the now even faster charging firebolt grenade, which we can use to fuel heat rises. And yet still an Ariana's headshot with an empowering rift will remain both hilarious and effective. Surprisingly, Technomancer still holds its own with little changes. While you may notice a slight decrease in overall rift uptimes, I think that as long as Lumina remains so criminally underrated, you will be able to abuse the 20% damage bonus with a high-impact reserve 72 RPM sniper to clean out enemy teams. Now all we need to do is convince Bungie to make a high-impact sniper that rolls with both increased damage reserves and snapshot. Last on our list is of course the Mida-wielding Space Crack Cocaine Field Warp Speed build. Mida still is one of the best and most slept-on weapons in this entire sandbox, boasting a time to kill of 0.9 at every range with increased mobility and radar awareness. Astrocyte blinking with a shotgun will never be bad, but with the gutting of handheld supernova, we will have to be more cognizant of our engagements. Even though this ability has increased range and knockback, 9 times out of 10, you will find yourself in a revolving sushi bar of shotgun pellets if you try and use this tool offensively. If you are careful, however, you can catapult some unwilling slob into a wall to clean up the remaining damage, which I will admit is pretty damn funny. You will need to convince Bungie to reduce the wind-up time of this ability, but even with that, this build will always have a spot in the meta for accurate wielders like ourselves. Maybe we should appreciate all these changes and nerfs for what build opportunities they will open up. I have my eye on the shoulder charge changes for some rather silly shenanigans. If you find the address of the Bungie employee who disabled Icefall mantels, send them my way so I can, have a pleasant conversation with them. I hope you find more ways to enforce our builds on the witless masses of shotgun apes. Maintain secrecy on our correspondence and make sure your peers never subscribe or worse, share your letters around. Your pal, Reginald. Whose castle is this?
This is the castle of my master, Guy de Lambert.
Go and tell your master that we have been charged by God with a sacred quest. If he will give us food and shelter for the night, he can join us in our quest for the Holy Grail.
Well, I'll ask him, but I don't think he'll be very keen. He's already got one, you see.
What?
He says they've already got one.